Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate was a Muslim sultanate based mostly in Delhi that stretched over large parts of the Indian subcontinent for 320 years. 5 dynasties ruled over the Delhi Sultanate sequentially: the Mamluk dynasty, the Khalji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty, and the Lodi dynasty. 3 dynasties were of Turkic origin, 1 dynasty was of Turko-Indian origin, and the last dynasty was of Pashtun origin. The Sultanate is noted for being one of the few states to repel an attack by the Mongol Empire, and enthroned one of the few female rulers in Islamic history, Razia Sultana, who reigned from 1236 to 1240. Qutb al-Din Aibak, a former slave of Muhammad Ghori, was the first sultan of Delhi, and his dynasty conquered large areas of northern India. Afterwards, the Khilji dynasty was also able to conquer most of central India, but both failed to conquer the whole of the Indian subcontinent. The Sultanate reached the peak of its geographical reach during the Tughlaq dynasty, occupying most of the Indian subcontinent. This was followed by decline due to Hindu reconquests, states such as the Vijayanagara Empire asserting independence, and new Muslim sultanates such as the Bengal Sultanate breaking off. During and in the Delhi Sultanate there was a synthesis of Indian civilization with that of Islamic civilization, and the further integration of the Indian subcontinent with a growing world system and wider international networks spanning large parts of Afro-Eurasia, which had a significant impact on Indian culture and society as well as the wider world. The time of their rule included the earliest forms of Indo-Islamic architecture, increased growth rates in India's population and economy, and the emergence of the Hindi-Urdu language. The Delhi Sultanate was also responsible for repelling the Mongol Empire's potentially devastating invasions of India in the 13th and 14th centuries. However, the Delhi Sultanate also caused destruction and desecration of politically important temples in South Asia. In 1526, the Sultanate was conquered and succeeded by the Mughal Empire. Background. The context behind the rise of the Delhi Sultanate in India was part of a wider trend affecting much of the Asian continent, including the whole of southern and western Asia, the influx of nomadic Turkic peoples from the Central Asian steppes. This can be traced back to the 9th century, when the Islamic Caliphate began fragmenting in the Middle East, where Muslim rulers in rival states began enslaving non-Muslim nomadic Turks from the Central Asian steppes and raising many of them to become loyal military slaves called Mamluks. Soon Turks were migrating to Muslim lands and becoming Islamicized. Many of the Turkic Mamluk slaves eventually rose up to become rulers and conquered large parts of the Muslim world, establishing Mamluk sultanates from Egypt to Afghanistan before turning their attention to the Indian subcontinent. It is also part of a longer trend predating the spread of Islam. Like other settled agrarian societies in history, those in the Indian subcontinent have been attacked by nomadic tribes throughout its long history. In evaluating the impact of Islam on the subcontinent, one must note that the northwestern subcontinent was a frequent target of tribes raiding from Central Asia in the pre-Islamic era. In that sense, the Muslim intrusions and later Muslim invasions were not dissimilar to those of the earlier invasions during the first millennium. By 962 AD, Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms in South Asia were under a wave of raids from Muslim armies from Central Asia. Among them was Mahmud of Ghazni, the son of a Turkic Mamluk military slave, who raided and plundered kingdoms in North India from east of the Indus River to west of Yamuna River 17 times between 997 and 1030. Mahmud of Ghazni raided the treasuries but retracted each time, only extending Islamic rule into western Punjab. The wave of raids on North Indian and Western Indian kingdoms by Muslim warlords continued after Mahmud of Ghazni. The raids did not establish or extend permanent boundaries of their Islamic kingdoms. The Ghuriid Sultan Mu'izz ad-Din Muhammad Ghori, commonly known as Muhammad of Ghor, began a systematic war of expansion into North India in 1173. He sought to carve out a principality for himself by expanding the Islamic world. Muhammad of Ghor sought a Sunni Islamic kingdom of his own extending east of the Indus River, and he thus laid the foundation for the Muslim kingdom called the Delhi Sultanate. Some historians chronicle the Delhi Sultanate from 1192 due to the presence and geographical claims of Muhammad Ghori in South Asia by that time. Ghori was assassinated in 1206 by Ismaili Shia Muslims in some accounts, or by Hindu Khokars in others. After the assassination, one of Ghori's slaves, the Turkic Qutb al-Din Aibak, assumed power, becoming the first sultan of Delhi. Mamluk, slave. Qutb al-Din Aibak, a former slave of Mu'izz ad-Din Muhammad Ghori, was the first ruler of the Delhi Sultanate. Aibak was of Cuman Kipchak origin and due to his lineage, his dynasty is known as the Mamluk dynasty. Aibak reigned as the Sultan of Delhi for 4 years from 1206 to 1210. After Aibak died, Iram Shah assumed power in 1210, but he was assassinated in 1211 by Shams-ud-Din Iltutmish. Iltutmish's power was precarious, and a number of Muslim emirs challenged his authority as they had been supporters of Qutb al-Din Aibak. After a series of conquests and brutal executions of opposition, Iltutmish consolidated his power. His rule was challenged a number of times, such as by Gubacha, and this led to a series of wars. Iltutmish conquered Multan and Bengal from contesting Muslim rulers, as well as Ranthambore and Siwalik from the Hindu rulers. He also attacked, defeated and executed Taj al-Din Yildiz, who asserted his rights as heir to Mu'izz ad-Din Muhammad Ghori. Iltutmish's rule lasted till 1236. Following his death, the Delhi Sultanate saw a succession of weak rulers disputing Muslim nobility, assassinations, and short-lived tenures. Power shifted from Rukn-ud-Din Firoz to Razia Sultana and others, until Ghiyas-ud-Din Balban came to power and ruled from 1266 to 1287. He was succeeded by 17-year-old Mu'izz-ud-Din Kaikabad, who appointed Jalal-ud-Din Firoz Khalji as the commander of the army. Khalji assassinated Kaikabad and assumed power, thus ending the Mamluk dynasty and starting the Khalji dynasty. Qutb al-Din Aibak initiated the construction of the Qutb Minar and the Quwwat al-Islam Mosque, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was built from the remains of 27 demolished Hindu and Jain temples. The Qutb Minar complex, a Qutb complex, was expanded by Iltutmish and later by Alauddin Khalji in the early 14th century. During the Mamluk dynasty, many nobles from Afghanistan and Persia migrated and settled in India as West Asia came under Mongol siege. Khilji Pashtun. The first ruler of the Khalji dynasty was Jalal-ud-Din Firoz Khalji. He came to power in 1290 after killing the last ruler of the Mamluk dynasty, Mu'izz-ud-Din Kaikabad, at the behest of Turkic, Afghan and Persian nobles. Jalal-ud-Din Firoz was of Turkic origin, and ruled for 6 years before he was murdered in 1296 by his nephew and son-in-law Juna Muhammad Khalji, who later came to be known as Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin began his military career as governor of Kara province from where he led 2 raids on Malwa and Divajiri for plunder and loot. His military campaigning returned to these lands as well other South Indian kingdoms after he assumed power. He conquered Gujarat, Ranthambore, Chitta and Malwa. However, these victories were cut short because of Mongol attacks and plunder raids from the northwest. The Mongols withdrew after plundering, and stopped raiding northwest parts of the Delhi Sultanate. After the Mongols withdrew, Alauddin Khalji continued expanding the Delhi Sultanate into southern India, with the help of generals such as Malik Kafur and Khusro Khan. They collected lots of war booty from those they defeated. His commanders collected war spoils and paid ghanima, which helped strengthen the Khalji rule. Among the spoils was the Warangal loot that included one of the largest known diamonds in human history, the Koh-i-Noor. Alauddin Khalji changed tax policies, raising agriculture taxes from 20% to 50%, eliminating payments and commissions on taxes collected by local chiefs, banned socialization among his officials as well as intermarriage between noble families to help prevent any opposition forming against him, and he cut salaries of officials, poets, and scholars. These tax policies and spending controls strengthened his treasury. To pay the keep of his growing army, he also introduced price controls on all agriculture produce and goods in the kingdom, as well as controls on where, how and by whom these goods could be sold. Markets called Shahana-i-Mandi were created. Muslim merchants were granted exclusive permits and monopoly in these mandis to buy and resell at official prices. No one other than these merchants could buy from farmers or sell in cities. Those found violating these mandi rules were severely punished, often by mutilation. Taxes collected in the form of grain were stored in the kingdom's storage. During famines that followed, these granaries ensured sufficient food for the army. Historians note Alauddin Khalji as being a tyrant. Anyone Alauddin suspected of being a threat to this power was killed, along with the women and children of that family. In 1298, between 15,000 and 30,000 people near Delhi, who had recently converted to Islam, were slaughtered in a single day due to fears of an uprising. He is also known for his cruelty against kingdoms he defeated in battle. After Alauddin's death in 1316, his eunuch general Malik Kafur, who was born in a Hindu family in India and had converted to Islam, tried to assume power. He lacked the support of Persian and Turkic nobility and was subsequently killed. The last Khalji ruler was Alauddin Khalji's 18-year-old son Qutb-ud-Din Mubarak Shah Khalji, who ruled for 4 years before he was killed by Khusro Khan, another of Alauddin's generals. Khusro Khan's reign lasted only a few months when Ghazi Malik, later to be called Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq, killed him and assumed power in 1320, thus ending the Khalji dynasty and starting the Tughlaq dynasty. Tughlaq. The Tughlaq dynasty lasted from 1320 to nearly the end of 14th century. The first ruler, Ghazi Malik, rechristened himself as Ghiyath al-Din Tughlaq and is also referred to in scholarly works as Tughlaq Shah. He was of Turko-Indian origins. His father was a Turkic slave and his mother was a Hindu. Ghiyath al-Din ruled for 5 years, and built a town near Delhi named Tughlaqabad. According to some historians such as Vincent Smith, he was killed by his son Juna Khan, who then assumed power in 1325. Juna Khan rechristened himself as Muhammad bin Tughlaq and ruled for 26 years. During his rule, Delhi Sultanate reached its peak in terms of geographical reach, covering most of the Indian subcontinent. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was an intellectual with extensive knowledge of the Quran, fiqh, poetry and other fields. He was also deeply suspicious of his kinsmen and wazirs, extremely severe with his opponents, and took decisions that caused economic upheaval. For example, he ordered minting of coins from base metals with face value of silver coins, a decision that failed, because ordinary people minted counterfeit coins from base metal they had in their houses, and used them to pay taxes and jizya. On another occasion, after becoming upset, by some accounts, to run the Sultanate from the center of India, by other accounts, Muhammad bin Tughlaq ordered the transfer of his capital from Delhi to Devagiri in modern-day Maharashtra by forcing the mass migration of Delhi's population. Those who refused were killed. One blind person who failed to move to Daulatabad was dragged. For the entire journey of 40 days the man died, his body fell apart, and only his tied leg reached Daulatabad. The capital move failed because Daulatabad was arid, and did not have enough drinking water to support the new capital. The capital then returned to Delhi. Nevertheless, Muhammad bin Tughlaq's orders affected history, as a large number of Delhi Muslims who came to the Deccan area did not return to Delhi to live near Muhammad bin Tughlaq. This influx of the then Delhi residents into the Deccan region led to a growth of Muslim population in central and southern India. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's adventures in the Deccan region also marked campaigns of destruction and desecration of Hindu and Jain temples, for example the Swayambhu Shiva temple and the Thousand-Pillar temple. Revolts against Muhammad bin Tughlaq began in 1327, continued over his reign, and over time the geographical reach of the Sultanate shrunk. The Vijayanagara Empire originated in southern India as a direct response to attacks from the Delhi Sultanate, and liberated South India from the Delhi Sultanate's rule. In 1337, Muhammad bin Tughlaq ordered an attack on China, sending part of his forces over the Himalayas. Few survived the journey, and they were executed upon the return for failing. During his reign, state revenues collapsed from his policies, such as the base metal coins from 1329–1332. To cover state expenses, he sharply raised taxes. Those who failed to pay taxes were hunted and executed. Famines, widespread poverty and rebellion grew across the kingdom. In 1338, his own nephew rebelled in Malwa, whom he attacked, caught and flayed alive. By 1339, the eastern regions under local Muslim governors and southern parts led by Hindu kings had revolted and declared independence from the Delhi Sultanate. Muhammad bin Tughlaq did not have the resources or support to respond to the shrinking kingdom. The historian Walford chronicled Delhi and most of India faced severe famines during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's rule in the years after the base metal coin experiment. By 1347, the Bahmani Sultanate had become an independent and competing Muslim kingdom in Deccan region of South Asia. Muhammad bin Tughlaq died in 1351 while trying to chase and punish people in Gujarat who were rebelling against the Delhi Sultanate. He was succeeded by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, who tried to regain the old kingdom boundary by waging a war with Bengal for 11 months in 1359. However, Bengal did not fall. Firoz Shah ruled for 37 years. His reign attempted to stabilize the food supply and reduce famines by commissioning an irrigation canal from the Yamuna River. An educated sultan, Firoz Shah left a memoir. In it he wrote that he banned the practice of torture, such as amputations, tearing out of eyes, sawing people alive, crushing people's bones as punishment, pouring molten lead into throats, setting people on fire, driving nails into hands and feet, among others. He also wrote that he did not tolerate attempts by Rathawis Shia Muslim and Mahdi sects from proselytizing people into their faith, nor did he tolerate Hindus who tried to rebuild temples that his armies had destroyed. As punishment for proselytizing, Firoz Shah put many Shias, Mahdian Hindus to death. Firoz Shah Tughlaq also lists his accomplishments to include converting Hindus to Sunni Islam by announcing an exemption from taxes and jizya for those who convert, and by lavishing new converts with presents and honors. Simultaneously, he raised taxes and jizya, assessing it at 3 levels, and stopping the practice of his predecessors who had historically exempted all Hindu Brahmins from the jizya. He also vastly expanded the number of slaves in his service, and those of Muslim nobles. The reign of Firoz Shah Tughlaq was marked by reduction in extreme forms of torture, eliminating favors to select parts of society, but also increased intolerance and persecution of targeted groups. The death of Firoz Shah Tughlaq created anarchy and disintegration of the kingdom. The last rulers of this dynasty both called themselves Sultan from 1394 to 1397, Nasir-ud-Din Mahmud Shah Tughlaq, the grandson of Firoz Shah Tughlaq who ruled from Delhi, and Nasir-ud-Din Nusrat Shah Tughlaq, another relative of Firoz Shah Tughlaq who ruled from Ferozabad, which was a few miles from Delhi. The battle between the two relatives continued till Timur's invasion in 1398. Timur, also known as Tamerlane in Western scholarly literature, was the Turkic ruler of the Timurid Empire. He became aware of the weakness and quarreling of the rulers of the Delhi Sultanate, so he marched with his army to Delhi, plundering and killing all the way. Estimates for the massacre by Timur in Delhi range from 100,000 to 200,000 people. Timur had no intention of staying in a ruling India. He looted the lands he crossed, then plundered and burnt Delhi. Over 5 days Timur and his army waged a massacre. Then he collected and carried the wealth, captured women and slaves, and returned to Samarkand. The people and lands within the Delhi Sultanate were left in a state of anarchy, chaos, and pestilence. Nasir-ud-Din Mahmud Shah Tughlaq, who had fled to Gujarat during Timur's invasion, returned and nominally ruled as the last ruler of Tughlaq dynasty as a puppet of various factions at the court. Sayyid. The Sayyid dynasty was a Turkic dynasty that ruled the Delhi Sultanate from 1415 to 1451. The Timurid invasion and plunder had left the Delhi Sultanate in shambles, and little is known about the rule by the Sayyid dynasty. Anne-Marie Schimmel notes the first ruler of the dynasty as Khizr Khan, who assumed power by claiming to represent Timur. His authority was questioned even by those near Delhi. His successor was Mubarak Khan, who rechristened himself as Mubarak Shah and tried to regain lost territories in Punjab unsuccessfully. With the power of the Sayyid dynasty faltering, Islam's history on the Indian subcontinent underwent a profound change according to Schimmel. The previously dominant Sunni sect of Islam became diluted. Alternate Muslim sects such as Shia rose, and new competing centers of Islamic culture took roots beyond Delhi. The Sayyid dynasty was displaced by the Lodi dynasty in 1451. Lodi. The Lodi dynasty belonged to the Afghan Lodi tribe. Bahlul Khan Lodi started the Lodi dynasty, and was the first Pashtun to rule the Delhi Sultanate. Bahlul Lodi began his reign by attacking the Muslim Jaunpur Sultanate to expand the influence of the Delhi Sultanate, and was partially successful through a treaty. Thereafter the region from Delhi to Varanasi was back under influence of Delhi Sultanate. After Bahlul Lodi died, his son Nizam Khan assumed power, rechristened himself as Sikandar Lodi and ruled from 1489 to 1517. One of the better-known rulers of the dynasty, Sikandar Lodi, expelled his brother Babak Shah from Jaunpur, installed his son Jalal Khan as the ruler, then proceeded east to make claims on Bihar. The Muslim governors of Bihar agreed to pay tribute and taxes, but operated independent of the Delhi Sultanate. Sikandar Lodi led a campaign of destruction of temples, particularly around Mathura. He also moved his capital and court from Delhi to Agra, an ancient Hindu city that had been destroyed during the plunder and attacks of the early Delhi Sultanate period. Sikandar thus erected buildings with Indo-Islamic architecture in Agra during his rule, and the growth of Agra continued. During the Mughal Empire after the end of Delhi Sultanate, Sikandar Lodi died a natural death in 1517 and his second son Ibrahim Lodi assumed power. Ibrahim did not enjoy the support of Afghan and Persian nobles or regional chiefs. Ibrahim attacked and killed his elder brother Jalal Khan, who was installed as the governor of Jaunpur by his father and had the support of the emirs and chiefs. Ibrahim Lodi was unable to consolidate his power, and after Jalal Khan's death, the governor of Punjab Daulat Khan Lodi reached out to the Mughal Babur and invited him to attack Delhi Sultanate. Babur defeated and killed Ibrahim Lodi in the Battle of Panipat in 1526. The death of Ibrahim Lodi ended the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire replaced it. Economy. Before and during the Delhi Sultanate, Islamic civilization was the most cosmopolitan civilization of the Middle Ages. It had a multicultural and pluralistic society and wide-ranging international networks, including social and economic networks spanning large parts of Afro-Eurasia, leading to escalating circulation of goods, peoples, technologies and ideas. While initially disruptive due to the passing of power from native Indian elites to Turkic Muslim elites, the Delhi Sultanate was responsible for integrating the Indian subcontinent into a growing world system, drawing India into a wider international network which led to cultural and social enrichment in the Indian subcontinent. During the Middle Kingdom's era from 1 CE to 1000 CE, the Indian economy was stagnant with no GDP growth for 1,000 years, remaining static at $33.75 billion. During the medieval Delhi Sultanate era between 1000 and 1500, India began to experience GDP growth for the first time in 1,000 years, increasing by nearly 80% up to $60.5 billion in 1500. In terms of GDP per capita, India's per capita income was lower than the Middle East from 1 CE to 1000 CE, but by the late Delhi Sultanate era in 1500, India's GDP per capita had increased to being almost on par with the Middle East. The worm-gear roller cotton gin was invented in the Indian subcontinent during the early Delhi Sultanate era of the 13th–14th centuries and is still used in India through to the present day. Another innovation, the incorporation of the crank handle in the cotton gin, first appeared in the Indian subcontinent sometime during the late Delhi Sultanate or the early Mughal Empire. The production of cotton, which may have largely been spun in the villages and then taken to towns in the form of yarn to be woven into cloth textiles, was advanced by the diffusion of the spinning wheel across India during the Delhi Sultanate era, lowering the costs of yarn and helping to increase demand for cotton. The diffusion of the spinning wheel and the incorporation of the worm gear and crank handle into the roller cotton gin led to greatly expanded Indian cotton textile production. Demographics. The Indian population had largely been stagnant at 75 million during the Middle Kingdom's era, from 1 AD to 1000 AD. During the medieval Delhi Sultanate era from 1000 to 1500, India experienced lasting population growth for the first time in 1,000 years, with its population increasing nearly 50% to 110 million by 1500 AD. Culture. While the Indian subcontinent has had invaders from Central Asia since ancient times, what made the Muslim invasions different is that unlike the preceding invaders who assimilated into the prevalent social system, the successful Muslim conquerors retained their Islamic identity and created new legal and administrative systems that challenged, and usually in many cases superseded, the existing systems of social conduct and ethics, even influencing the non-Muslim rivals and common masses to a large extent, though the non-Muslim population was left to their own laws and customs. They also introduced new cultural codes that in some ways were very different from the existing cultural codes. This led to the rise of a new Indian culture which was mixed in nature, different from ancient Indian culture. The overwhelming majority of Muslims in India were Indian natives converted to Islam. This factor also played an important role in the synthesis of cultures. The Hindustani language began to emerge in the Delhi Sultanate period, developed from the Middle Indo-Aryan Apabhramsha vernaculars of North India. Amir Khusro, who lived in the 13th century CE during the Delhi Sultanate period in North India, used a form of Hindustani which was the lingua franca of the period in his writings and referred to it as Hindavi. Military. The bulk of Delhi Sultanate's army consisted of nomadic Turkic Mamluk military slaves, who were skilled in nomadic cavalry warfare. A major military contribution of the Delhi Sultanate was their successful campaigns in repelling the Mongol Empire's invasions of India, which could have been devastating for the Indian subcontinent like the Mongol invasions of China, Persia and Europe. The Delhi Sultanate's Mamluk army were skilled in the same style of nomadic cavalry warfare used by the Mongols, making them successful in repelling the Mongol invasions, as was the case for the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. Were it not for the Delhi Sultanate, it is possible that the Mongol Empire may have been successful in invading India. Temple desecration. During the Delhi Sultanate there were a total of 37 instances of Hindu temples being desecrated or destroyed in India. Richard Eaton has tabulated a campaign of destruction of idols and temples by sultans intermixed with instances of years where the temples were protected from desecration. He listed a total of 37 instances of temple desecration in India during the Delhi Sultanate from 1234 to 1518, but noted there were also many instances of Delhi sultans who often had Hindu ministers ordering the protection, maintenance and repairing of temples, according to both Muslim and Hindu sources. For example, a Sanskrit inscription notes that Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq repaired a Shiva temple in Bidar after his Deccan conquest. There was often a pattern of Delhi sultans plundering or damaging temples during conquest and then patronizing or repairing temples after conquest. This pattern came to an end with the Mughal Empire, where Akbar the Great's chief minister Abul Fazl criticized the excesses of earlier sultans such as Mahmud of Ghazni. In many cases the demolished remains, rocks, and broken statue pieces of temples destroyed by Delhi sultans were reused to build mosques and other buildings. For example, the Qutb complex in Delhi was built from stones of 27 demolished Hindu and Jain temples by some accounts. Similarly, the Muslim mosque in Kanpur, Maharashtra was built from the looted parts and demolished remains of Hindu temples. Muhammad bin Bakhtiar Khalji destroyed Buddhist and Hindu libraries and their manuscripts at Nalanda and Odantapuri universities in 1193 AD. at the beginning of the Delhi Sultanate. The first historical record of a campaign of destruction of temples and defacement of faces or heads of Hindu idols lasted from 1193 through the early 13th century in Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh under the command of Ghori. Under the Khaljis, the campaign of temple desecration expanded to Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra, and continued through the late 13th century. The campaign extended to Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu under Malik Kafur and Ulugh Khan in the 14th century and by the Bahmanas in 15th century. Orissa temples were destroyed in the 14th century under the Tughlaqs. Beyond destruction and desecration, the sultans of the Delhi Sultanate in some cases had forbidden reconstruction of damaged Hindu, Jain and Buddhist temples, and they prohibited repairs of old temples or construction of any new temples. In certain cases the Sultanate would grant a permit for repairs and construction of temples if the patron or religious community paid jizya. For example, a proposal by the Chinese to repair Himalayan Buddhist temples destroyed by the Sultanate army was refused, on the grounds that such temple repairs were only allowed if the Chinese agreed to pay jizya tax to the treasury of the Sultanate. In his memoirs, Feroz Shah Tughlaq describes how he destroyed temples and built mosques instead, and killed those who dared build new temples. Other historical records from wazirs, emirs, and the court historians of various sultans of the Delhi Sultanate describe the grandeur of idols and temples they witnessed in their campaigns and how these were destroyed and desecrated. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?